Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Josh Vickers, and I'm with RTI International's Forensic Technology Center of Excellence, and I will be your technical host for today's webinar. Today's webinar is entitled Making a Forensic Scientist, a Recipe for Success. This webinar will discuss the challenges facing forensic science today and provide advice for entry-level practitioners on skills that are needed to succeed as a forensic scientist. Today's format is a little different than most of our webinars. We will be having quite a large panel discussion for the majority. We do have 3 subject matter experts as well as our moderator, so we'll go through introducing them. Our first subject matter expert is Miss Jody Wolf. She is the Crime Lab Administrator for the Phoenix Police Department Laboratory Services Bureau, which is an ISO accredited laboratory that employs over 140 technical and support personnel, which provides forensic services to the 5th largest city in the United States with a population of over 1.6 million. Jody has been employed by the Phoenix Police Department Crime Laboratory for the past 18 years. She is an active member of several professional organizations and has been actively involved in the criminal justice community. Jody received her Bachelor's of Science degree in Biology and Chemistry from Regis University in Denver, Colorado, and her Master's of Science degree in Chemistry from Arizona State University. She also received a Master's in Business Administration with an emphasis in Technology Management from the University of Phoenix. Our second subject matter expert today is Ms. Jan Gurton. Ms. Jan Gurton is currently the Director of the Forensic Services at the CBI, and that's been since late 2009. Prior to her service in Colorado, Jan spent over 23 years with the Illinois State Police, with the last 7 years as the Deputy Laboratory Director at the Forensic Science Center at Chicago. Under Jan's leadership at the CBI, she has increased the number of scientists by 112%. She's also built 2 new laboratories in Pueblo and Arvada, and established a fee for service technology discipline and assisted in legislation to implement statewide sexual assault submissions. Jan is an avid proponent and champion of innovative DNA technology, and the CBI is participating in a research program that uses rapid DNA in booking stations and in collaboration with a hospital for sexual assault cases. Our third subject matter expert is Ms. Cammie Dubach. She is a 21-year veteran, of the Drug Enforcement Administration, serving in multiple capacities during her tenure with the agency. Ms. Dubach graduated summa cum laude from Ohio University in June of '97 with a bachelor's in forensic chemistry. In March 1998, she began her career with the DEA as a forensic chemist at the North Central Laboratory in Chicago, advancing to her senior forensic chemist in July of 2005. Ms. Dubach was promoted to supervisory chemist at the North Central Laboratory in December of 2007 and served in that position until late August of 2018 this year when she began her current position as a program manager with the Office of Forensic Sciences Quality Assurance Section, which is located in Arlington, Virginia. And our moderator for today is our very own Dr. John Morgan. Dr. John Morgan is internationally recognized for his work in forensics, body armor, special operations technology, and predictive policing. He currently directs and develops forensic science research, training, and quality assurance programs, including the National Institute of Justice's Forensic Technology Center of Excellence, who is bringing you today's webinar, and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's National Laboratory Certification Program. John Morgan is responsible for management, business development, and strategic planning to maintain and grow our programs in forensic science and other related areas such as education, policing, homeland security, defense, and international capacity building. Previously, Dr. Morgan was a member of the Maryland House of Delegates and Congressional Science Fellow of the American Physical Society. He also served in the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of Defense as a senior executive, managing programs that encompass scientific research, public safety, military technology, special operations, information systems, and standards. Just a quick disclaimer, the opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this presentation are those of the presenter and do not necessarily reflect those of the Department of Justice. Any products and manufacturers discussed are presented for informational purposes only and do not constitute product approval or endorsement by the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, without further ado, I would like to hand things over to our director and moderator for today's webinar, Dr. John Morgan.
Okay, Josh, thank you very much. I appreciate all those introductions, and I appreciate everybody's participation here today. I'm going to be talking a little bit just to introduce the panel about the broader picture of forensic science in the United States. And the reason why we're doing this is because one of the things that I think is an expectation of folks going into forensic science now, but also I think increasingly of the leadership in forensic science, is that you see the big picture, that you understand kind of not only where your lab bench and what you're supposed to be doing on your lab bench or within your practice area, but you're also caring and engaging on the bigger problem areas in forensic science. And so I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about that current picture of forensic science in the United States, but hopefully it'll be relevant to some of our international folks. I know we have a few international folks online today. So I'm going to start with this. It is a little bit of a hurricane. This is actually a picture of Hurricane Florence, which came roaring through. Or fortunately in Raleigh here, we mostly got a lot of rain, a little bit of wind. But the idea is that, yeah, there's an awful lot that is stewing around in terms of issue areas in forensic science. We have, at least in the United States, an extraordinary increase in the number of deaths related to opioids, for example. We're very interested in improving both accreditation and certification, accreditation of laboratories and certification of professionals. We have an interest in understanding better the human factors, such as whether an individual can have cognitive bias with respect to information that may not be relevant to a case or other elements of practice, and of course trying to improve statistical interpretation and expand the extent to which we can do not only quantitative interpretation of forensic evidence, but also understand better what errors are associated with the determinations that a forensic scientist would make, as well as many other issues that surround these basic ideas. So let's talk about a couple of things in particular, just to give a basic idea. About 400 crime laboratories in the United States, about 4 million service requests per year. That's a lot. I just showed really quickly, those are the top 5 areas: controlled substances, forensic biology, tox, latent prints, and crime scene in terms of service requests that come into crime laboratories. About 14,000 people and $1.7 billion of combined budget. That's from 2014, so we must assume that those money figures at least have increased substantially. And in certain areas, such as controlled substances, service requests we know have increased substantially. We're expecting a new census of publicly funded crime laboratories here coming up in 2019 to update those numbers. One of the things that's been really great is that 82% of crime laboratories, according to a different 2014 census, are now accredited. There's some, to the extent that there's some gaps there, they generally tend to be smaller laboratories, sometimes even one-person laboratories, and those even are now coming forward, and there's some projects now to try to improve through ASCLD and others how those smaller units can access accreditation. And 72% of the labs actually employ one certified analyst at least. Of course, we'd like for that to be 100% as well. So one of the main issues is governance, because each laboratory falls under the jurisdiction of its own federal, state, local, or tribal authority. There is no national governance structure here in the United States for forensic science. And that is in some contrast, for example, to the United Kingdom now, which has a national forensic science regulator who has a fair amount of power with respect to the promulgation of standards, which has been something that is addressed to some degree here through the organization of scientific area committees at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. We also worry about how we can make sure that science and technology is adopted into practice. I mean, that's what we do here every day in the Forensic Technology Center of Excellence. There's actually a new working group that the Department of Justice is forming called the Forensic Laboratory Needs Working Group that is designed specifically around that particular issue. And there's an issue with respect to the development and allocation of resources. How do we know what resources are needed in each particular laboratory, and how can we justify the allocation of resources in a way that's going to be most effective to address gaps that exist out there in crime laboratories? Within the laboratories themselves, one of the main issues that I think all of us should be aware of is should labs be independent of police agencies? This was recommended by the National Academies back in 2009 as being necessary to ensure the integrity of forensic laboratories. Some forensic laboratories are now independent of police agencies, but by no means all. How do states ensure the reliability and efficiency in forensic laboratories? Some of the states, such as Texas in particular, have established state forensic science commissions that, again, have substantial authority with respect to ensuring that all labs are accredited, to make sure that the staff within the labs have appropriate professional certifications, that standard operating procedures are in place, and that when there are problems, they are investigated appropriately. And one of the things that I know that many of the folks on the phone with me now care about a great deal is how can we develop better managers and leaders. ASCLD has a leadership academy that they've developed, and we've worked with them on the National Forensic Science Academy as well, and other attempts to improve management and leadership because it is not something that is generally taught within the undergraduate programs of forensic science in the United States. Josh, I'm seeing a couple of comments about the sound being sporadic. Is there anything that I can do on my end to improve that?
No, John, we're going to
we'll just keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. Very good. So the next issue I mentioned up front is the one of opioids and novel psychoactive substances. NPS is involving, for example, emerging cannabinoids, cathinones, as well as things like the fentanyls that fall under the opioid family. Deaths in the United States associated with opioids and NPS have more than doubled to 45,000 per year, which is extraordinary. That actually makes it a larger number of deaths per year than the height of the AIDS epidemic in the United States. The laboratory issues associated with this and related problems is how can labs keep up with caseloads? We know that there are some laboratories that have seen as much as a tripling or more of caseloads within the controlled substances arena. So it isn't just can you do the analysis, it's also can you manage it? And this goes back to some of what I said on the prior slide, that understanding how to manage the work and how to communicate and work with your colleagues is as much a skill as actually being able to do really good chemistry, and it's important in practice. How do we keep personnel safe from these sometimes very highly toxic compounds? And how can we contribute to understanding the crisis? Because crime laboratories, but also medico-legal death investigators, often are the ones who see these compounds first. They see the impact that is occurring in the community, and that information can be used enormously with enormous value to improving responses in general to not only the opioid epidemic, but other things that are going on in the world. One of the things that we've also talked about in this area, because of the enormous number of emerging compounds, new ones every week really in some cases, improving the instrumentation available to crime laboratories, such as time-of-flight mass spectrometry instruments that allow us to see a much broader range of analytes at the same time and do more screening techniques or be able to do more data mining of the analysis that is occurring. One of the things I mentioned also was human factors. Forensic scientists are susceptible to human stress and error, including cognitive bias, vicarious trauma, that is the trauma associated with you're dealing with man's inhumanity to man, and seeing that up close in crime scenes or again in medico-legal death investigation, and organizational issues as well. Every crime laboratory is an organization. It has people that need to relate to one another and work with one another, and they have personnel issues like what we're talking about today. How do we identify who's going to be a really good forensic scientist? And that might vary. In fact, it almost certainly does vary across the disciplines. Recruiting a latent print expert isn't going to be the same as recruiting a DNA expert. In fact, one of the ways in which the community has been trying to respond to this particular problem is by trying to get better fundamental understanding in each discipline. One example of that is the NIST report I have off to the right on this slide, which actually looked specifically at latent print examination and human factors and made dozens of recommendations for improvements in standard operating procedures, and is a real primer, I think, to the on just how fundamental it is when you say, well, I mean, it's the people matter in these cases, and what knowledge, skills, and abilities they bring to bear, but also how were the standard operating procedures put together to minimize mistakes and be able to understand them and move on from them after they occur. The other thing is actually understanding that crime laboratory people are real people and they need assistance sometimes, and even counseling resources. I know that we've had, for example, mass shootings in certain cities, and in those cases, the people who respond have to experience a level of trauma that is very, very unusual, and they deserve to have services necessary to be able to deal with what they are experiencing, what they see and experience. Statistical interpretation is something that we want to try to improve upon as well, and that the forensic community has been struggling with for several years now in terms of how we can take some of the qualitative decisions that are being made necessarily by examiners, because frankly only human beings can make certain kinds of decisions, but can you do that on the basis of a sound statistical basis? And there might be and again, we'll take latent prints because it's one that's well understood by a lot of folks. There are actually many different decisions that occur during the latent print identification. It isn't just, I'm going to match up this particular latent print that I found on my table with the thumb, right? Also, is this print even good enough for us to do an analysis on? Is it good enough to be put through a APHIS system, and so on? And each of these has a qualitative element to it, and frankly can be examined from a statistical perspective as well. One of the things that's been done here, and again I really encourage folks to learn more about it, is FRStat, which was developed out of the U.S. Army Crime Laboratory by Henry Swafford, and is an excellent tool to complement the C-O-M-P-L-E-N-E-N-T, to work with the qualitative examination process and be able to characterize it statistically with respect to how strong a particular match might be. Backlogs have been an issue for as long as I've been familiar with forensic science, and I've now go back. My initial work in working with forensic scientists is from 2002, and at that time there were plenty of both biological evidence backlogs and controlled substance backlogs. The cases that are waiting to be examined are of enormous importance because justice should not be delayed. But they are practical issues. How do we prioritize the evidence? How do we communicate appropriately with crime scene units and investigators? What is we just talked about human factors and these issues that being too close to the case might make you biased, but being too far away might make it so that the case is moving ahead without having the grounding in what the objective science is saying from the evidence. And having those communication channels open can help you deal with and eliminate backlogs and also prioritize evidence better. Those are substantial issues. Some of them are technology oriented, such as using evidence management systems, and some of them are organizational, such as cold case units, and some of them are we just need to build our capacity in crime laboratories. Quality assurance. I know that Cami Dubak and others here on the call are have enormous experience in QA, and it is priority, of course, for the forensic science community to be able to demonstrate both its objectivity and its reliability of the results that they produce. I mentioned the Organization of Scientific Area Committees. If any of the folks who are developing forensic scientists out there really want to see how forensic science should be done, the standards that are being produced by the NIST OSAC are meant to be meant to guide forensic science forward with respect to improvements in the standards that on which all of the test methods are based for the disciplines. But there are even more issues that I think we still have not yet tackled. Do proficiency tests accurately reflect the expertise needed in each discipline? Can laboratories deal with errors with an appropriate level of scrutiny, but without having a blaming culture? And I know Jody Wolf has talked about this enormously, and it's an important issue because we want to have public accountability, but we also want to maintain a positive laboratory culture so people feel comfortable with respect to identifying errors, so we can correct them and move on within a particular laboratory, but also as a community. The FTCOE, I'm glad to hear that we have a very good turnout here for this particular webinar. There are a number of ways for folks who are starting to come into the professional disciplines in forensic science to access fundamental information from our work, and I hope you particularly pay attention to the website www.forensiccoe.org, and of course my podcast, Just Science, which is a weekly podcast. We actually had a number of podcasts this past week introducing you to some of the leaders in forensic science, as well as some of the folks who work in the FTCOE about some of the work that we're doing. And the National Forensic Science Week has been a great opportunity for everybody there to talk a little bit more broadly about that. But please take advantage of those resources. So our next speaker is going to be Jody Wolf from Phoenix. And Josh, let's cue her up and let's get her talking. Jody, are you there?
I am. I was waiting for Josh to jump in.
No worries, Jody. The floor is yours.
I just want to say welcome to everybody. Thank you. It's National Forensic Science Week, so happy National Forensic Science Week to everybody. And I'm super excited to be here. I know that our focus for today is what do we look for in potential forensic scientists and those that are embarking on this lifelong journey into a realm of science and criminal justice and helping to keep our community safe. So I'm very honored to be a part of this panel with my colleagues Jan and Cami, as well as John, to talk about this important subject for all of us as we continue to build the industry. So let's jump in and talk a little bit about what we look for in new hires, particularly individuals that are just coming out of an undergraduate or graduate program. I think one of the things that you'll hear all of us talk about is that our parent agencies and their human resources departments will have played a role in determining the minimum hiring requirements for all of our positions. There'll be some similarities that you'll identify across all of those positions, but there are also going to be some unique differences based on the jurisdiction, the bargaining units that are involved in any of those governmental agencies, and just some unique hiring procedures and practices. But in a nutshell, for us in the Phoenix Police Department, we're looking for somebody, if they want to be a forensic scientist, to have a Bachelor of Science degree in a natural science or a related field. Even if we're looking for somebody, even if that individual has a Bachelor of Science degree in a forensic science, we're always going to look at somebody's transcript. So the BS in a natural science or related degree gets you the opportunity for us to be able to review your information, but we're still going to look at those transcripts because we want to know and we want to ensure in our candidates that they have those fundamental scientific principles mastered through their undergraduate programs. And we actually have quite a bit of competition for our entry-level positions. We experience anywhere from 200 to 400 applicants for all of our entry-level positions. So even though the hiring requirement may be a BS, in a natural science, most of our applicants that end up getting hired now have graduate degrees. It really makes them marketable, but we're looking for those individuals that have mastered those fundamental scientific principles, so that we're not training people on fundamental science or the scientific method or how to prepare reagents or how to do conversion calculations and things like that. In addition, depending on which track you want to go down, you may have to have more chemistry or more biology, depending on what you're interested in doing. Like if you want to be an analytical chemist that works in the controlled substances, toxicology, or trace sections, you're going to need that analytical chemistry component. If you want to be a DNA analyst or a serologist, then you're going to need the biology component. So it really depends on the track, what areas of emphasis you may want to pursue, but it really boils down to the having those fundamental science classes. Additionally, we're looking for individuals that are good communicators. So we talked about the hard skills with those fundamental science degrees, but our candidates also need to be well-rounded and be able to communicate, because where does the rubber meet the road? It meets the road when we get in court and we testify. So those individuals who have good communication skills and ability to communicate very technical information to lay individuals is a skill set that will serve everyone in this profession very well. Not only communicating to juries, but being able to communicate with your peers within the laboratory, within the profession, as well as our primary customers, which include detectives, police officers, prosecutors, defense attorneys, judges, Police Citizens Academy, you name it. You're going to end up communicating to lots of different individuals about what you do, because there is a huge fascination with our profession. And one of the other things that I always tell my staff is that have a long vision. So we've talked about what are the required hard skills that we're looking for, that fundamental scientific principle mastery. We've talked about some of the soft skills, which I would highlight as communication and the ability to interact with multiple individuals from diverse backgrounds. Most of the people that we end up interacting with outside of the laboratory have no technical background whatsoever. They may be experts in their field, but they may not have that technical background. And finally, one of the things that I always mentor my staff on, and those that I end up having the ability to have this conversation with, is have a long vision. Most of us end up in this profession. I've been with Phoenix for 18 years. Before Phoenix, I was in the private industry, and I can tell you that once you find the profession, and I love my job. It's the best job I've ever had. I love working for the city of Phoenix. We get to make a difference in people's lives, but it's a long career. I am just now not the newbie. A lot of people in our profession end up being in it for 30, 40 years, which is a really great thing to be able to say about our profession. But have a long vision. Understand that your career will take you a long way, and the opportunities that get presented to you along the way, make the most out of them. Take advantage of those opportunities. If they ask you to lead a project, or if they ask you to be a volunteer for a project, take advantage of it. For example, one of our strategic areas of interest for our department is community engagement. We make a difference in the community. We contribute to the public safety of everybody who lives in the city. And that means also engaging with them and helping them to understand the services that we provide. And sometimes people, because they're so busy, because we all have lots of cases to do, we all have rushes, we all have to go to court and testify, taking an hour out of their day to give a tour to a citizen or provide a presentation to a high school class that's focusing on forensic science, or assisting a volunteer within the department, those are all community members. And a lot of people are like, well, that takes me away from my work. It's a different kind of work, and it's just as important as the other work that we do. because it communicates and builds those relationships with the people that we serve. And those individuals that take advantage of those opportunities and make the most of those opportunities, whether it's engaging with the community, completing validation projects, attending a meeting, providing primary training to a new analyst, those all build and continue to build those hard and soft skills as that individual progresses through their career. And those are the individuals that will succeed within their agencies, will promote within their agencies, and will have incredible lifelong experiences. Being able to meet people like Jan Gurton at the meetings that we've attended, and really to see the world. So I'm so very thankful and honored for the opportunities that have been afforded to me as a member of this community, and I hope that by sharing some of this information about what makes forensic scientists successful will be helpful to all of you. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but also happy to turn it over to my colleagues on the panel for them to share their information.
Okay, thank you so much, Jody. Let's move on to Colorado, although I understand that Jan is in the room with you, Jody, so but we're just going to assume Jan is in Colorado. Jan with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Jan?
Thank you very much, Dr. Morgan, and it's an honor to be on the panel and to have been asked to participate. And I couldn't agree more with Jody's basic premises about who we look for in our new hires and our scientists and the hard sciences. The communication and the testimony is so important in a scientist to be able to explain the principles of why when we hit an item after latent print processing and putting some dyes and stains on that item, that we hit it with a laser, why does it fluoresce? Understanding those principles and being able to explain them in the courtroom is so key to a successful forensic scientist. And having those hard science understandings of organic chemistry and inorganic and electrons and having that understanding in those 4 years of undergraduate is so key to a successful individual in our industry that we highly, highly recommend those hard sciences for an undergrad. The testimony piece is really key, and those principles are very valuable. In addition to the hard sciences is that most laboratories do not spend time, although we ensure that an employee understands the safety in the laboratory, but how do we make reagents? Why don't we add acids to bases in the laboratory, and understanding the safety, how to carry a bottle of acid around the laboratory safely and carefully is what is taught in those organic chemistry classes and inorganic science, and those principles are really necessary for a successful forensic scientist. And Jody's right, the applicant pool with the advent of all the CSI shows, the interest that has been generated throughout our industry in the last 15, 20 years has caused the applicant pool to come in with master's degrees. But we do go back to those transcripts as an undergraduate and make sure that those principles are there for a new hire. Dr. Morgan, you talked about so many great things in your overview and your PowerPoint that when we talk about backlogs, I just wanted to comment that I believe our industry really needs to change some of our vernacular on backlogs and really call it a caseload. We will never, ever be out from underneath a backlog. Crime continues every day. Evidence comes into our front doors every day. And having the public and our policymakers understand that the funding and the grants that we use are for everyday casework that comes in. Every crime that's being committed across this country is a caseload, and we work side by side with our law enforcement partners as they try to solve crime that is occurring in the jurisdiction. And backlog always has a negative connotation that we always seem to be judged by our numbers and our statistics, but we really need to start looking at that in context to the crime rates in our jurisdictions, the patterns, what's happening, and how do we handle our policymakers in providing the grant funding and showing them the work that is done every day, that continues every day, along with the crime that occurs in our jurisdiction. And I really think that's an important conversation for our policymakers and our leaders across the nation to really engage in about what does a backlog mean to the caseload that comes in every day. And so it's been very exciting to be here. Jody and I are in fact working on international standards together at a meeting here that she's hosting in her police department, and it's been an honor for me to participate on that committee too. So I will pass it back to you, Dr. Morgan.
Okay, thank you so much, Jan. And now let's move to our final panelist to give a few opening remarks, and that's Cami Dubach from DEA, who, as you recall, is with the Office of Forensic Sciences there and in charge of quality assurance work. So, Cami, please share with us.
Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. It looks like we have a lot of international personnel on the line, as well as here in the U.S. Once, like the other panel, I appreciate the opportunity to serve as a interviewer on the panel so that I can impart some of my knowledge about hiring and the skills that we're looking for in our agency, which are pretty similar to the other two panelists. So I'll basically give you a bit of a background on our process. It's a little bit different since we're a federal agency, but like Jody, we are also, as chemists, required to have a bachelor's in a natural science or related science field with at least 20 hours of chemistry if you are going to be a drug analyst. It's different for our latent print examiners and our digital evidence examiners. The latent print examiners do not require degrees. Experience in the field can count toward hiring. But HR does all of our initial research into who is qualified based on the set criteria that you would find on any application under usajobs.gov. Basically, the process that we go through here is pretty extensive. You would be required, at least for chemistry, to go through a series of tests. One would be a general chemistry knowledge exam, an attentional detail test, and then a structured panel interview with at least 3 members, either senior scientists and supervisors or higher level. If you pass all of those areas, you would be hired pending successful completion of an in-depth background check, which includes a drug panel and a urine test. So those are just the basic requirements coming in order to get your foot in the door. And like the other two panelists, the demand is high for the actual number of jobs we have available. So we are actually, we just actually put out a vacancy announcement, and we had about 170 odd applicants for this latest go-around for chemists all throughout our labs in the United States. And I believe the last time we may have had close to 500. So it just depends on how long the vacancy announcement is open. But we do have a lot of competition. A lot of our applicants have PhDs or other advanced degrees, but there are a lot who also have bachelor's degrees. And it all depends on how well you interview, how well you can pass your exams, and how you come across to the panel. Like the other two panelists, we are looking for strong technical skills, and if you have an advanced degree, we would be looking for even more skills such as with instrumentation. A basic theory and knowledge of how instruments work would be great to come into a job with. We don't expect you to have extensive work with them if you are only having a bachelor's degree, but if you have a master's or a PhD where you've done some sort of graduate research, we would expect you to have some kind of fundamental knowledge on the instrumentation that you would be using in the laboratory, such as GCMS, an IR, or GC. Those are just the basic types of instruments we have available. Communication, I'm not going to go into too much since the other two panelists covered that in great detail, but that is a huge part of our job. as analysts, and testifying in court is imperative to our job, and that we know exactly what we are saying, that we are not stepping outside of our boundaries in terms of what information would be accurate for us to provide to the jury in the court, and that we are able to communicate effectively and clearly what we did, how we arrived at our conclusions, and what those conclusions mean. I will just talk a little bit about the types of individual traits that have done well in our organization, or any forensic organization. I would prefer candidates to be self-motivated. I think those type of individuals fare really well. The job is what you make of it. I've had a lot of opportunities, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've had while working with DEA. I've got to travel all over the country. I've given presentations at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, at the Midwestern Academy of Forensic Scientists, at the Southwestern Academy of Forensic Scientists. I've also been able to attend various training, and I also serve on accreditation of other laboratories as a member of the ASCOD Lab International accreditation team. So I've had a lot of experience, and so the job is what you make of it. The opportunities are out there. I think Jody was talking about that actually. Grab the opportunities as they come your way. It is a long-term career if you want to make it that way. And that's something that since I have over 21 years now, I am not a newbie either, but I decided to make it a career. I loved what I did when I was on the bench. I loved doing analysis. Drug chemistry was exciting. We always saw something new, and that's still happening at a much faster pace nowadays. So we always have to keep up with the changing substances that are out there. You would also have to have a strong work ethic. That plays very well in an organization, to know that you were able to work above and beyond what may be required of you. Just because in this field we're all public servants and we're mission-oriented. You have to believe in the mission, and you have to be focused on meeting the mission. And our mission is basically public safety and making sure the public is always our number one priority, and that tax dollars usually fund our jobs, so we want to make sure that we're doing our best for the public. You would also be able to be flexible and adaptable, because not every day is the same. Things come up, as the other two panelists can attest to. You may prepare for your day, and then 5 other things come up that you were not anticipating, such as you have to go to court, an attorney wants to meet you for pretrial, there's a clandestine laboratory you need to head out to, maybe in a different state if you're us, since we service multiple state regions in all of our laboratories. So you can't always be so rigid that you can't be flexible to adapt to a changing pace every day. It's also great to be able to multitask effectively. That is very important in the job we do, just because of the different facets that we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis in the laboratory. Having a positive attitude is a very big plus, and something that I look for. It makes the day go by faster when everybody that you are working with in a team are positive and ready to come to work and help with the mission and help support our law enforcement customers. Also, being able to be a team player and coordinate with your group members and your team members, and make sure that you can manage conflict and work well with others in that environment, because there are more people you'll be working with than just yourself. So that is very important. And we also like to see passion. It's nice to be passionate about something, and I happen to be very passionate about what I do, and I really believe in our mission at the DEA and the Office of Forensic Sciences. So if you can be passionate about your job, I think that's when it becomes a career. So I feel that that's something that is important as well. Another thing that you would probably need in this area to be successful is skills in technology. We're constantly adapting to changes in technology and software programs unique to our agencies. A lot of people are now using a LIMS system in order to manage laboratory evidence and also reports. Your computer skills, Microsoft Office Suite, be proficient in Access, Excel, PowerPoint, things of that nature. Also problem solving. It's very important that you are able to problem solve because that's what we do every day. We are faced with a situation, a case, and being able to problem solve and work through scenarios that you may not be expecting or encountering unanticipated substances or different things you may not expect during the course of your analysis. It's great to be able to problem solve. Time management is also important. You have to be able to manage your time in a way that you can be efficient because as Jan was talking about, we do have backlogs, and I do love her suggestion about relating to it as a caseload instead of a backlog because backlog does have a very negative connotation associated with it. And a lot of decisions on the higher end, in our case, would be the Senate and other people who make our budget. It would be nice to not be able to have such a negative connotation associated with the fact that, you know, we have people in the labs working very hard at trying to service the public and making sure that we're doing our jobs every day. But time management is very important in helping with that. So those are some of the most important qualities that we look for. Those are the qualities that have led to individuals having very successful and long careers with our agency, and I'm assuming the other agencies as well throughout the United States in the labs. So I'm happy I was able to give you some information today. I hope it was helpful, and I welcome any questions that you may have of me. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Cammie. That was very good. I appreciate all of the comments from Jody and Jan and Cammie. Let's go into discussing some of the questions. I'm going to have one in particular, and I have to say I was struck by each one of you said that a bachelor's degree may not be enough. You know, it's an extraordinarily difficult thing, though, to tell somebody that they need to get a master's degree to get into the forensic laboratory. So what would you say to an individual, they're in an undergraduate program in forensic science, about you know, their prospect and how they can kind of adjust their expectations at this point, or maybe be able to get into a laboratory at the bachelor's degree level? Why don't we start with you, Jan, in Colorado? What would you tell that individual?
Thank you, Dr. Morgan, for the question. What I would advise our new candidates and graduates is that anything that they can do to give themselves additional skills as their internships, volunteering at local law enforcement, helping crime laboratories. We get unpaid volunteers all the time in Colorado and at the CBI, that would give them an understanding, law enforcement, the practices in the forensic science laboratory, how evidence is handled, how they can show that on their employment history or their resume, their CV, to a hiring authority that says, here's an individual. Yes, she has a bachelor's. She's got excellent grades in those basic classes that we talked about. But here is somebody who has shown initiative to go out and continue to build their skill and knowledge of a forensic laboratory. That, to me, as a hiring authority, is much a greater advantage than somebody who has gone from their undergrad into their grad and are competing for the same position. So it's a balance of what kind of initiative is that individual showing, and balancing that against our research scientists, which our industry greatly needs also, and looking for the right person and the right fit. Forensic scientists are unique individuals. They most often are sitting at their bench doing their own casework, and yet they need to be a team player. So I look at team sports. What did they play in their college days, in high school, and how do they interact with their coworkers? Because a homicide case just doesn't involve a DNA scientist or the firearms examiner. We have to work together to provide information to that law enforcement agency. So there are those team skills that are necessary also. But I look at the initiative, because what Cammie said is about problem solving is absolutely right on, that we need to look at the evidence presented at our bench. How do we apply our knowledge of forensics to look at those items? They're different every day. Something's changing every day on a scientist's workspace. And how do we apply our knowledge to figure out the identity of that perpetrator, and what can we do with the tools in our forensic laboratories to figure that out with the evidence that is in front of us? So having that initiative, that applied knowledge for problem solving, and being able to think through the issues that are facing those individual scientists. So I do look for the extra mile in an individual. They may only have a bachelor's, which is excellent and the basic that we're needing, but they have gone further and they have volunteered. They have done some research for a local laboratory for 6 months and helped us publish that research and did some of that data collecting that sometimes our scientists can't get off of the bench, if you will, and do that research, but we can have an intern and help us data collect. Those individuals do go through backgrounds. They do get polygraphed, and they do get a background check by our agency to ensure that they can roam around the laboratory and handle evidence cautiously and under the mentorship of a senior scientist. But that's one of the things that I look for.
Okay. Why don't we, Jody? Let's go to you and then to Cammie for some guidance for those who are still at the undergraduate level and might be a little bit concerned about the fact that you all have such a competitive landscape for new entrants into the field.
Thanks for the question. It's an excellent question. It's a question that we field often. How do I stand out in the crowd? Because it is a crowd. It's a very competitive environment to gain entry into, and so those things that you can do that set yourself apart from your competition is really important. So one of the things that you can do to set yourself apart is seeking that advanced degree. That may or may not be practical for those individuals, and they may want to enter the field before they seek that advanced degree. So how do those that have a bachelor's degree set themselves apart? And one of the things that I would echo that Jan mentioned is by contributing to the profession before you're in the profession. So there's a couple of different ways that individuals can do that, and that's by volunteering and or seeking out an internship. And this is a great way to introduce yourself to those individuals and those decision makers within the laboratory. They're going to make the hiring decisions. One of the things that I tell people that are seeking out those volunteer and internship opportunities is persevere. Don't give up. Continue to submit your applications. Continue to stay in touch with those decision makers, because projects cycle. So you may not have a project when you made the first phone call, but a couple of months later when you make the next phone call, then the project might be ready then, or there might be a new project available. So volunteer and intern. One of the things that you have to do in order to become a volunteer or an intern is to go through the background investigation process. So I know that Cammie talked about this a little bit. That's one of the stumbling blocks that a lot of our candidates, when they're going through the hiring process, falter, and that's the background and investigation process. You have to make good decisions in your life. Be financially responsible, not get in trouble, not partake of controlled substances. All of those kinds of things contribute to what is assessed when you go through the hiring process. And so, at least in our agency, we see about a 60% failure rate in the background process. 2 out of 3 individuals will not make it through background. If you're an intern or a volunteer, you've gone through that background, we know that you're going to be a legitimately eligible candidate. The next thing is, once you are a volunteer and intern, demonstrate your work ethic, all of those skills that Cammie, Jan, and I have talked about, your ability to communicate, your ability to be a team player, your ability to problem solve, your ability to have a positive attitude. Because guess what? We ask volunteers and interns to do all the stuff that we don't have time to do, and that is less important than the other stuff that we do. If you're lucky, you do get a research project, but you may be answering phone calls, you may be emptying the biohazard trash, you may get to make a reagent, but you're not typically going to have much to do with evidence. You're typically not going to have much to do with the main primary business focus of the laboratories, which is testing evidence. Volunteers and interns don't do that, but if we know that a volunteer will gladly take out the biohazard trash and then come back and ask, what else can I do, and show up on a routine basis and demonstrate that work ethic, then they have set themselves apart from their competition. Now we know you. Now we know you made it through background, and we know what kind of work ethic you have. So those are some of the ways those that don't have advanced degrees can continue to set themselves apart. And the other thing that I would add to that as a part of our selection process, once you have those minimum qualifications, so you have a Bachelor of Science degree and you've submitted the application through our Human Resources portal to be considered. I think Cammie mentioned she had up to 500. We routinely have anywhere from 200 to 400 candidates. We will send out a subsequent survey and ask them to go through that survey. It'll be questions about what kind of forensic science discipline are you interested in? Have you heard of the XJ3-265? Have you had any experience making reagents? So there'll be those types of questions. Follow the directions and be truthful, because there is no XJ3235.
Right.
So it tests integrity, and you will be surprised. A lot of people will say yes, and so yes, I gave away one of our secrets, but you're testing integrity because we have to have confidence in the individuals that are part of our organization. That survey will narrow the candidate pool to those individuals that have demonstrated continually that they meet the minimum qualifications and they are starting to demonstrate that they have the skill sets that we're interested in. And so having a master's degree or a doctorate degree isn't going to guarantee you a job in a forensic science laboratory. It's making yourself stand out from the crowd. And there's lots of different ways that you can do that. Bottom line, don't give up. Keep trying.
So Cammie, let's have you weigh in on this, and I'd like for you also to kind of, since you're with the Drug Enforcement Administration, to talk a little bit more too about background. So what is your expectation at DEA with respect to the substance use background of individuals who come in to apply for jobs in the lab?
So basically, related to substance abuse, if you have used marijuana a few times when you were younger in high school, or you experimented a few times, that may be acceptable. Anything else is no. So if you've used anything more than marijuana or used marijuana frequently, you will not even be considered. You would be eliminated right away. That's just because that's what we do. We work with controlled substances all day long, every day, and we have to have our utmost confidence and trust in the people we hire. As far as the process with us, it's a little bit different because we actually, as hiring managers, do not see the transcripts or the questions that are asked on usajobs.gov until possibly we get our best qualified list. And what we do that may give undergraduates a better opportunity for hiring is we divide our postings into different grade levels. So it may start as a GS 5 or 7 for a chemist position. That would require only a bachelor's degree. If you have experience equivalent to a master's degree, that may put you at, say, a GS 9. And then if you have a PhD or the equivalent experience, you may be able to be hired on as a GS 11. So the posting will be for different grade levels, and so you would be qualified if you had a bachelor's degree at the 5 or 7 level. And it also helps when you answer the questionnaires because it's basically a standardized form that you fill out. Be as specific as possible about your experience and your expertise in certain areas. If you did internships, that will definitely boost your score when they are looking at whether you're highly qualified, moderately qualified, just average qualifications. So anything you can do, like the other two panelists said, they're dead on. Do something outside of your college experience. Volunteer. We do offer internships at several of our laboratories. When I was in Chicago, we had 3 interns over the past several years from universities that we reached out to or that had reached out to us. So if you're at a university and you're an undergraduate student, you can talk to your advisor and ask him to reach out to one of the drug enforcement laboratories to find out if they're hiring interns. They're non-paid positions at this point, but it's a great opportunity for you to get experience in the field. And then once you actually fill out your application, you go through that series of tests and the interview that I was talking about. So everyone is on an even playing field, and that's why we designed that structured process so that there is no advantage given to one person over another. All the questions asked are the same. The tests are the same for everyone, no matter what your degree. So you could possibly be hired with a BS, and we do have a lot of chemists who have BS degrees working in our lab now. So that's not a deterrent, so don't get frustrated or discouraged. That is always an option, just to get a bachelor's degree, try your luck, and see where that gets you. But like the other two panelists said, make sure you do other things if possible. Those internships and the volunteer work is very helpful.
Okay, another set of our questions has to do with some of the other skills that are non-traditional in terms of how you would think about them from a forensic science perspective, and how important it is to build those up. And so one set of them, for example, is learning statistical techniques or having a stronger math background. Another one might be computer programming and other kinds of those kinds of skills. Jody, why don't you start with this question? Do you think that those particular kinds of skills are going to be very important with respect to how they come into your laboratory, or how would that vary across the disciplines, perhaps?
Hi, John. That's a great question. We're not, at least at this point, requiring individuals to be math majors and have a good understanding of advanced mathematic principles in order to be a DNA analyst or a latent print examiner or a tool mark examiner of firearms, as those disciplines seek out additional statistical models to apply to their practices to reach those conclusions and demonstrate the strength of those conclusions. But in a science degree, you are going to have proficiency in math. And so, again, it's that fundamental level that is required that you would be exposed to in pursuit of a natural science degree that is going to serve you well, regardless of the discipline that you seek out as a forensic scientist. That's the way it stands right now. One of the things that does become important as a forensic scientist, because the market continues to evolve and change and technology advances, is that you seek out agencies, be smart about the agencies that you select to be a member of, because you want to be able to have those opportunities for continuing education and technical advancement. Okay, I have an iPhone 8 Plus. I don't have the iPhone 10, but now we have the iPhone 10X or S or whatever it is. But iPhones continue to change over. I mean, it's every single year there's some advancement in technology. Forensic science is not immune to that. Technology advances in forensic science as well. And so having technology proficiency, being comfortable engaging in technology, and being exposed to the opportunities for continuing education and technological advancement once you're a forensic scientist is really key to success as a scientist within the community, as well as those agencies that are responsible for employing those professionals to continue to be able to meet the demands of the community. So one of the things that we do as a leader within our own organizations is seek out those opportunities to ensure that our employees have those skill sets mastered and they're exposed to those theoretical principles. They can demonstrate their competency and continued proficiency within those technologies, and we continually pursue and getting better and being the best that we can possibly be.
Jan, I'd like to circle back with you on another point and pick it up. So obviously, Cami represented an appropriate approach for the DEA with respect to history of substance use. But of course, marijuana is legal in Colorado. How do you all, and do you know how other states handle marijuana use for applicants coming into the crime laboratory?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity. We have had an ever-changing climate in our processes and working with our HR, but what I like to have our folks out there understand is that we still are a drug-free workplace, and law enforcement still supports the federal laws and regulations. So even though you may have tried marijuana in these recreational legal states, we still are looking for individuals to understand that once or twice, like Cami spoke about, may be acceptable depending on how many years prior to the application that you're doing, that you're submitting for that agency. But it's really important to realize that even though marijuana is legal in many states now, that law enforcement is still a drug-free workplace environment. We still recognize our Controlled Substances and Cannabis Control Acts at the federal level, and that we're still looking for folks who have not participate in regular drug use as in our marijuana environment. And so that has been an ever-changing climate with creating policies and working with our HR and personnel departments on making sure that that's clear on our announcements these days, which we never did before. But we do now put some statements in there about a drug-free workplace and that we still are recognizing federal laws on Drug and Controlled Substances Act. So thank you for that opportunity. I wanted to get back to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Cami, perhaps you can also address some of these other issues with respect to, kind of the fundamental. Is it, are you looking for people who have stats and math background? Are you looking for people with computer backgrounds? I assume you all are, as you mentioned very clearly, you're very interested in analytical chemistry and instrumental analysis. Those are things that are of enormous importance to you, but how about some of these other kind of background areas that are kind of more emerging with respect to, where forensic science is heading?
It's always helpful to have a variety of people with different traits that they can bring to the table. So if someone has like a data analytics background in addition to meeting the hours of chemistry requirement, that would definitely be a positive. We have a person here who actually does a lot of data crunching and numbers crunching here, and has developed something with our SI unit, which is our basically technology unit. So we do have a separate technology unit here that handles most of our databases and our systems. They're the ones who build everything for us, but a degree or experience in or skills in a certain area like math or data analytics does not hurt you at all, for sure, and we would welcome people with different characteristics that they can bring to the table to help our organization out, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So back to you a little bit here, Jan, because I know, not that there's it's different elsewhere, but I know in particular in Colorado, the relationship between the forensic science community and the crime laboratories on the one side and law enforcement on the other is outstanding. I mean, and including the folks who are in district attorney's offices. It's really you really have a very rare combination of excellent people across the board there. But there's often stress, right, between law enforcement and forensic scientists, and sometimes you even hear, police will say, oh, those forensic scientists, what they're doing isn't that important. You'll hear that even, or they're not effective in some way. Tell us a little bit about the relationship that you all have between between CBI and law enforcement, and kind of what expectations people might have coming in as forensic scientists, or maybe even we have some future police officers here with respect to that relationship.
Yes, thank you. We really advocate for a environment of collaboration that law enforcement, the detectives and crime scene folks play a role, and our scientists play a role, and our district attorneys and prosecutors play a role, as well as our defense attorney. It is a criminal justice community. When we speak about that, it is really a true statement. We all have to collaborate to try to find justice to our victims. And when you spoke about stress, we immediately have had some major cases in Colorado that have hit the national news. We had a gentleman a father who allegedly killed his two daughters and placed them in an unfavorable place when he was discarding the bodies in a terrible manner. And that does affect not only our crime scene folks who were out there all night long out in the field throughout the night recovering those two little girls and the mother, but it affects our scientists when that evidence comes into our laboratory. And many of our scientists are new moms and dads, and these kinds of cases do affect them. And we provide all kinds of assistance, and we provide it in an environment that says it's okay. It is okay for our staff to go and see a professional and have 1 or 2 or 3 visits that the agency supports and will compensate that employee to go and just speak to a law enforcement professional psychologist, employee assistant plan to really help that individual get some of those things out of their head, so that PTSD does not start to participate in their mind and start to evolve in their heads. Because the value of our scientists that we invest in is for a 25, 30-year career. And these kinds of terrible cases cross their benches often. And the agencies in Colorado and our agency that I can speak about and many of our colleagues are very supportive, and we want to encourage our scientists to go. It is not a bad thing, and we want to make sure that their health and their emotional and their psychological health is maintained over the course of a career in forensic science. Just as our law enforcement, our patrolmen and patrol women who may get into a shootout, it affects them. Same things occur in the forensic scientists. Even though we're in the lab and we're not out in the field, but our moms and dads feel for the loss of those children, and they want to provide justice to the family of those victims. And so we want to create that culture that it is okay for them to go and seek help, and we encourage. We often even have a lab-wide debrief where we bring that professional to address the whole laboratory staff on a terrible crime that may have affected our regional laboratories, and help them debrief and give them the tools to understand that when they go home from work that they might be edgy, how to deal with their grief, and how to make sure that their anger is not taken out on their loved ones at home who are welcoming them back in from a day at the laboratory or a day at crime scene. And so it's very important that our staff and scientists and new rising scientists understand that it is okay. It does affect, and we recognize that, and we want to help them through that process.
That's excellent, and good information about just laboratory culture. Jody, this is something that you've spoken about in many, many forums, and I'd like for you to address that too, because I think it's underestimated by people coming into the system just how important laboratory culture can be and contributing to that. How do you establish a laboratory culture, and what are your expectations with respect to people who are coming into the field with respect to how they contribute to a positive laboratory culture?
It's such an important topic, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak about it. And as you mentioned, I am very passionate about this, and we spend a lot of time with each other, whether we're talking about our colleagues within the laboratory or our criminal justice partners, like officers, detectives, prosecutors, defense attorneys. It's the entire gambit. We spend a lot of time with each other, and I think that it boils down to a couple of different core principles, and that's one, communication, which I've talked about already, and professionalism. Those two core competencies are really important in keeping and maintaining those within the perspective of the role that we play within the community. I think a lot of scientists that have been in the industry for a long time think about defense attorneys in particular with a with an asterisk next to the word defense attorneys, because we think that they're always out to get us. There's always a catchphrase with them, but that's not the case. They are seeking information just like anybody else is in this profession. And so we want to engage with all members of the criminal justice community, not just certain aspects of it. And I think that that's a real misnomer or myth associated with forensic science, is that we're pro-law enforcement or we're pro-prosecution. That couldn't be anything further from the truth. We're pro-science. And science can answer some things, and science can't answer other things. And as you master your forensic science discipline, you learn about those limitations, and those are the things that we have to be able to recognize and own our limitations within the disciplines, as well as being able to communicate to those that we work with what those limitations are. For example, in a sexual assault case, DNA analysis doesn't prove consent or non-consent. There is a limitation to what we do. And I think sometimes when people get really passionate about their role within the criminal justice community, sometimes you lose perspective. And so the things that we do in my laboratory to help engage with those challenges is to communicate. We talk about those challenges. We have the options that Jan mentioned, but then we also created an opportunity within Arizona called the Arizona Forensic Science Academy. And we bring guest lecturers to the state of Arizona. We invite all the members of the criminal justice community so that we can have this ongoing dialogue about the hot topics, whether it's cognitive or contextual bias, whether it's probabilistic genotyping, or the FBI allele frequencies, or whatever the current issue is facing not only forensic science but the entire criminal justice community. We engage and we have open, transparent dialogue so that we can break down those barriers. There's no secrets. There's nothing super squirrel associated with it. We want to have that open dialogue. And when somebody asks me a question about how do you indicate the presence of blood, whether that's a detective, whether that's a defense attorney, whether that's a prosecutor, whether that's a judge, my answer is the same because I'm a scientist. I don't change my answer based on who I'm talking to. Now, I may use different vocabulary because of their technical experience, but it's still the same answer because I'm a scientist. And so we engage, we communicate, and we remain professional. And that's one of the things that those programs like Jan talked about that I think become so important, is because when you are exposed to that vicarious trauma, it has an impact on you, and I can speak to that firsthand experience. I was a brand new forensic serologist working in the forensic biology section, and I had just finished my training program, and I was also just a brand new mother. I'd just come back from maternity leave, and so my baby daughter was only a few months old, and one of the first cases that I ended up working was a child abuse case, where the father stepfather burnt their 5-year-old's hand on a clothes iron because the 5-year-old took a $5 bill out of his wallet. I don't know why the child took the $5 bill out of it, but he seared her hand to the clothes iron. And my job was to remove that human tissue from the iron so that we could do the DNA analysis and also swab and collect biological materials from the handle so that we're looking to answer questions relative to the commission of that crime so that decision makers can make informed decisions about how to proceed. And I had a really hard time with that case because I was a brand new mom, and it was very difficult to disassociate myself from the evidence that I was responsible for testing and my own human experiences. And so I had a really good discussion with my supervisor about it, and she told me something that I, to this day, remember. And she said to me, your job is to help answer those questions and make a difference so that these types of things don't happen as often and justice is served. And it really struck a chord with me. But I also know that we as humans take those experiences and we can seek release from those frustrations and those difficult situations through humor and unprofessional behavior. And so having open dialogue, engagement, communication, and calling out those situations so that we can always remain professional is really important to the health of the organization. Just like going and getting your annual physical and getting your blood pressure and going to the dentist, those are all important considerations about your overall health. Being engaged, open communication, transparent, and remaining professional are all really important to taking care of your organizational culture. And I'm going to step off my soapbox now.
That was very good, Jody. Cammie, you said also some, that was great stuff. Cammie, you had some really great stuff in your discussion about some of these ideas about self-motivation and work ethic and having a passion for the mission and the work and just how you contribute and having a positive attitude. Do you have suggestions for ways to implement a positive attitude in the laboratory atmosphere and how we can encourage others to provide positivity there as well? Give us kind of your soapbox on that, please.
Well, I think that employee engagement is very important to a positive attitude in the laboratory. So what we started implementing was getting employees involved and participating in the processes, whether that be our 5-year strategic plan. It used to be comprised of all management making decisions about where the agency was going to go in 5 years, and we started to realize that that wasn't really a way to get employees engaged, and they weren't really buying in to our plan necessarily because they weren't a part of it. So by engaging the employees at the level of the chemists or the laboratory workers or the physical science technicians or the latent print examiners or the computer forensic examiners, we decided to get a group together this past go-around made up of not only management but also of every type of worker in the laboratory, whether it was the evidence specialists, the chemists, the lab workers, and we all together developed the strategic plan for the next 5 years. And we also got every laboratory involved in maintaining that plan, and it's their ownership that leads to its success. So they're supposed to focus on certain things they would like to improve over the course of the next 5 years in small chunks. So, for example, in Chicago when I was there, they decided they wanted to try teleworking to see if they could write their reports up from home. So we instituted that for people who had long commutes, and that led to more positive attitude in the workplace, increased productivity, job satisfaction. People didn't have to take as much leave for doctor's appointments because they could telework for a part of the day, and the rest of the day they could leave to take their child to the doctor or themselves to the doctor. We also instituted a wellness program government-wide that 3 hours a week the analysts and the laboratory employees are able to take an hour of wellness to go work out, work on their health, whether that be yoga or or whether that be running or whatever that means is to de-stress. That wellness program has been successful in that decompression also. We also started fundamentals of Scrum in the laboratories over the course of the last year and a half, and we have daily 5 to 10 minute stand-up meetings. And the supervisor just goes to be the facilitator, but the chemists or the latent print examiners or the admin group, they lead those meetings, and they talk about what they did to help someone out the previous day, what they're going to do to help the team out that day, and what they're working on and any obstacles they may be encountering. And my job as a supervisor was to help eliminate those obstacles. So that has helped tremendously with communication, with fostering team building and ownership of a process, just to make them part of decisions that go on instead of us giving them policy. If they actually can participate in that process, employee engagement is, I think, a number one factor in leading to a positive attitude and culture change in the laboratories.
So one of the things that's being talked about a lot on the sidebars is the participation in groups, organizations, associations, and that kind of thing. Of course, the Society of Forensic Toxicology meeting is coming up, which is a very popular and important conference. There's also the American Academy of Forensic Science and that kind of thing. I'll leave it open to any of the panelists to speak which groups or associations people should join to get into the forensic science community and kind of how they should approach that. I also know that all of you have spoken very highly about your experiences in engaging in those organizations. So any insight along that line, I think, would be very helpful to the group.
Hi, John. This is Jan from CBI, and the first, I think, organization that is really very popular for young undergrad students and looking to get into the field, and they have a place for students, is the American Academy of Forensic Science. They really understand bringing our young students and undergrads, college grads, graduate, bringing them into the forensic environment. They offer opportunities for them to volunteer at the conference so that their registration is a lesser amount as they are just, dealing with their tuition costs and trying to really get their feel for the industry. But the American Academy of Forensic Science is really a perfect spot for a young scientist who wants to get into the field to see how they like it. They can go and watch those presentations in all the disciplines and start to interact with the senior scientists who are presenting on their research, and those open forums is a great place to start.
I would agree with Jan. I would offer that there's also some regional associations that can provide some additional networking opportunities, as well as, depending on the forensic science discipline that you're interested in, like the American Academy or the American Chemical Society. Exposing yourself to those opportunities in which you can create networks within your desired profession is really important, regardless of where you're at within your educational journey. So if you're a second-year college student, I think Jan brings up an excellent point. Join the American Academy of Forensic Sciences as a student member. It will create those opportunities for you to get information and also have the opportunity to attend an annual meeting. And you create those networks. You start to meet people in the profession. There's also website information. So all these professional associations have websites. You can sign up for newsletters. You can gain access to the literature that's generated by those organizations as well. It's really up to the individual to seek out those opportunities, because there's plenty of information and opportunity out there for them to advance, even if they aren't in the crime lab yet.
Mm-hmm. And Cammie, are you going to be going to SOFT?
I am not going to be going to SOFT. It's a whole funding issue for us with the federal government, but it's quite possible that several of us could be at the Academy meeting, the next one. We usually at least send multiple people to attend those, and you know, we try to reach out when we're there and make connections. People looking for jobs like to ask us some questions, and we usually send people for a presentation, so that's a good way, like both of our panelists said, to meet people for sure.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what you all look for at the DEA with respect to that kind of engagement. I know that that's something that you're looking for on the applications with respect to some of those ancillary, that kind of ancillary information about engagement of people, whether it be in associations or my daughter's applying for college and she's all worried about extracurricular activities, right? And what do you? Then it's kind of the equivalent, right? I mean, what do you at DEA? Is that a differentiator for at DEA?
It's not a differentiator for the basic application. It's not a requirement or a prerequisite. However, we strongly encourage our analysts to become involved in these professional organizations because it is a chance to get an outside perspective. You get to see different organizations, meet people from all over the world, and discuss what is important to you and what you're passionate about. It also gives you an opportunity to serve on, as a presenter or just attend presentations. You can see what's out there to keep current in the field that you're going into. So nothing hurts. For sure, anything that you have to add always helps, but it's not a requirement. It's just strongly encouraged. It also shows that self-motivation, going that extra step to be involved outside of actual work hours, which, shows us that you're self-motivated and you're really passionate about pursuing the career outside of your 9-to-5 job.
Mm-hmm. So several of the questions, and I appreciate earlier, Jan, you mentioning the idea that, well, no, it's not backlogged, it's caseload, and I'm learning that lesson. But the fact is that the caseloads are becoming much more difficult, especially depends on the region and the discipline in terms of what's going on there. The caseloads can also rise and fall with respect to particular incidents and things of that nature. So just naively, why not just hire more forensic scientists or, train your forensic scientists with, sending them back to school or to different training and that kind of thing. So what are the strategies that you all employ in order to deal with the caseload increases? And I'd love to hear from all three of you on that topic. But we'll start with you, Jan, and then go through all of you.
Sure. Yeah. Dr. Morgan, it is a ever-changing field, and we try to really look at our crime rates and our patterns, not necessarily our backlogs, but where is the crime in our local towns and states? Where is it going? What's happening? And our laws change and our policy issues change in the state of Colorado, for instance, and we have recreational marijuana now. And what we need is that we have some of our bad guys are coming in and say they're growing hemp for manufacturing a rope, for instance, and it's not illegal grows, as they try to tell the law enforcement who just arrested them. But so now we're testing hemp for quantity of THC in the legitimate hemp farms, and quote unquote, they're corroborating their story that they actually have hemp. So our landscape is ever changing with the types of crimes, and it ebbs and flows like you spoke about. And so what we try to do is, for instance, we will work with our manufacturers, because it is a collaborative process, looking for more capacity. Over the years, our mass spec auto samplers have grown from injecting one at a time to having trays that could hold 100 samples and it can run overnight. So we work with our manufacturing companies to try to give us more capacity on the number of samples, and then let those samples run overnight in our drug chemistry discipline, or even in our DNA area, where our genetic analyzers went from a single capillary electrophoresis called the 310 back in the mid-90s, ones that we're up to 3,500s now, where we are injecting multiple capillaries at the same time. So we work with our manufacturers. we work with looking at dealing with lean approaches and looking for workflow processes. And in Colorado, we sat down with our DNA staff. I took them off-site to a hotel conference room. We sat down and said, look, we want to look inside. What are we doing right and what are we doing wrong in our flow? Where's the log jam? What things? Because our scientists, as I always say, they're in the ditches. They're doing all the work and they're right there in the trenches, and they already know what can be fixed. I often say that management forgets to ask them, what is our log jam? Where is our processes could be better? What paperwork does not need to be filled out anymore because we have it electronic, for instance? So we went and we sat in a conference room in a hotel for a day and a half and put up big Post-it notes and set up a little round table, and our DNA folks moved from area to area and wrote down log jams and things that they thought we could minimize, maybe even remove from the SOP, that we don't need to do it anymore. And we took a look at that, and we have really come up with a nice little scheme I call load leveling. You know, we have our workflow processes based on their recommendations, the scientists who are in the trenches, and we have really been able to increase our productivity and look at ways to make sure that inside the house, inside our labs and our laboratories, we are looking at things with an open mind as leaders, bringing the SMEs, the subject matter experts, the scientists who are doing it every day, and asking them for their perspective and what can we improve upon, what should we get rid of, how do we make our processes better, and so that our laboratory management, our laboratory limbs, our instruments are not the limiting factor on having our scientists be the very best that they can be in working cases. And so we've had those discussions. We are doing it now with other disciplines and fingerprints and trace chemistry and all the other disciplines that we're looking at being able to batch and become more and more productive in doing casework. Thank you.
Jody or Cammie, would you like to address that particular question with respect to how to deal with the caseload issues?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This is Cammie. We sort of take a multifaceted approach because we cannot control what's coming in, but we, like Jan said, can try to control what we're doing in-house to improve our processes to make everything as lean as possible. So we did implement a Lean Six Sigma approach. We had studies done in 2 of our laboratories over the course of the last 18 months, and all laboratories are now, it's been implemented. Chicago was the last one, which started in June. We've seen an increase in productivity by about 14% system-wide. So we're looking at when we go out and survey all of the laboratories every year, instead of focusing on, management issues, we are this year focusing on processes and the different processes that we think could be made more lean in order to help our analysts out. We're also doing things with instruments and methods to make them shorter, to make the analysis time shorter as far as the analysts go. It helps them to be more productive. We've also gone to talking with our AUSAs and our agents to find out what actually is needed in a case, because a lot of times they go on search warrants and they seize 100 pieces of evidence, but is that really necessary for the prosecution of the case? And when we communicate with the attorneys and the agents, what we find out is not necessarily all of them are needed. So we try to triage things based on priority and things that are most meaningful, because anything that's not meaningful is considered almost wasteful, especially in terms of resource use. We also have to make sure that we're constantly looking for innovation and ways to improve our processes. So innovation is a key concept that, sometimes laboratories aren't the best at, we have scientific minds, sometimes we're not the most innovative, but we are trying to get there with the LSS approach and some of the other methodology that we're using to try to make our processes more lean and cut back on our analysis time, as also try to see what's coming in to see if we can curb something on the front end.
So, Jody, I'd actually like to shift gears a little bit to another topic, because we have a question that came in from Mandy Jocelyn, and I'd like to just read it. To give some context, I'm a second-year undergraduate in forensic biochemistry with a concentration in pre-med, double minor in Spanish and anthro, so she's a busy person. I'm planning to be a forensic pathologist. Being such a new student, I'm wondering, what are the biggest misconceptions people have about forensic science? How do employers vet out the people who are in the profession for the wrong reasons, such as because forensic science is cool or because they watched Dexter? So I think, I've never watched Dexter, but I definitely think forensic science is cool, so I hope I don't fall into the weeded out category, Jody. But how do we kind of deal with the fact that forensic science has become almost too cool for its own good?
Well, I'm young enough to be able to share that I was introduced, what I thought of forensic science before forensic science became cool was Quincy Adams. So
yeah, absolutely. I remember that.
To be able to share that. So I think that there are a lot of, this is a great question, and it's a question that we field from people who are seeking entry into the profession. First, I would like to congratulate Mandy and all the other participants who are on this webinar for doing exactly what you're doing, which is to inform yourself so that you can understand what those misconceptions are and what those myths are, because seeking information empowers you to make really good choices with your own life and those that you impact as a result of what you do. And so, Mandy, I know that you said that you're pre-med, so I was a pre-med also. I had no idea forensic science even existed except for Quincy. I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to be a forensic scientist at the time. I wanted to be a doctor. And so I was a pre-med double major with biology and chemistry. I entertained a math degree as well as a triple major, but I wanted to get done in 4 years, so I decided to save that for the future. But there are a lot of myths, and I think one of the ones that we deal with mostly is the concept, are we sworn or civilian? A lot of those shows portray forensic scientists as sworn individuals in a law enforcement agency. And it depends on the jurisdiction. Sometimes they can be sworn, but most of the time they're civilian subject matter experts who are professionals within the forensic science industry. Even if they are a sworn individual, they are still, the industry is moving towards seeking those applicants that have the fundamental coursework and degrees that will make them a good forensic scientist. So I would say starting off, that's probably one of the first misconceptions. Another misconception is that we all work in the field, that we're all responding to crime scenes. We bring the evidence back to the laboratory. We test that evidence. We turn around within a few hours or 60 minutes or less and give that information to somebody, or we go out and we arrest individuals and then we get to interrogate them. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. It may not be clinical samples that we're dealing with, but it's very much associated or similar to a clinical environment in which we're doing our work. We do have subject matter experts that will go out to crime scenes and do crime scene investigation and crime scene processing, but most forensic scientists don't wear that hat in the United States. Most of them are associated with the laboratory. They have a Monday through Friday job that exists during normal business hours, and they go home and they get to be with their families. There's a caveat to that, however. As a forensic scientist, you always need to be ready to come in and be a team player no matter what time of day it is, no matter if you've got a vacation coming up, because there are going to be those situations and those cases that are going to demand your flexibility, and so that you are present to be able to contribute to that case. It could be testimony, it could be testifying, it could be working a high-profile serial investigation over a weekend where immediate public safety threat is present. You have to be flexible, but most of the time you're in a lab Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. So I think those are some of the misconceptions, but again, Mandy, I would congratulate you. It sounds like you've set yourself on a really good path to achieve your career goals, but you've also created and pursued a degree program that's going to allow you options. Options are great, and you need those options in order to be flexible with your own career and your career advancement. So great job, everyone.
Cami or Jan, do you want to address the issue of the CSI coolness or forensic science coolness issue, and kind of how you look on folks as they come into the field and how they might it's a great motivator, but it also can detract from their effectiveness?
Yeah, this is Cami. We don't see it all that much in our laboratory because it's more specifically discipline focused on chemistry. More so, it's pretty heavy on the chemistry, but we do have the latent print examiners and the digital evidence examiners as well. However, we do see that people who come in may have the misconception, as Jody said, that you're going to be in the field a lot more than you are. 20 years ago when I first started, we were going on clandestine laboratories quite often. Sometimes I would be in the field for almost 72 hours straight, but that does not happen anymore. Most of the time is spent in the laboratory. Probably 90% of the time is spent in the lab actually analyzing evidence. So I think a lot of people initially, when they're in school, may get into the forensic field thinking they're going to get that excitement of going out into crime scenes and being able to process evidence there and take it back and analyze it in an hour, but that definitely isn't reality. So if someone is thinking of getting into the field and that's what it's going to be like it is in the CSI shows on TV, that is definitely not reality. However, there are opportunities for field work. They're just more few and far between than they were. But yes, that is, I would say, one of the biggest misconceptions is that, they're in the field more than they actually are.
Yes, and if I could just piggyback for a moment, I do believe that years ago, like Cami said, we were sort of jack of all trades. We had many laboratories had the criminalist title, which you were taught many different disciplines trying to analyze evidence in a laboratory for a case. And our industry has evolved to ensure that our forensic scientists are really true subject matter experts. They know the most about a discipline when they walk into that courtroom, and they can explain their results and their testing methods, and that they are the most confident because they are truly subject matter experts for DNA, drug chemistry, latent prints, whatever the evidence is that they are forensic scientists that they work on and try to find identity and help corroborate either the suspect's story or not. So we have evolved over 20, 25 years in creating more of a forensic scientist expert versus a criminalist or a person who is trained in multiple disciplines, so that they are jack of all trades and master of none, and we have tried to evolve over that. And the crime scene is the same thing. Crime scene responders should be experts in crime scene technique and collection and using the latest instruments and drones, Faro scanners, those types of things that they use out in the field, and not be a jack of all trades, but a true scientist. So that's what we are advocating now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So in closing here, I'd like for each of you, if you have any closing thoughts, to please give those, but also address we have a couple of practical questions. One about sites. I think, Cami, you mentioned USA Jobs, which is where to look for DEA positions. But other job posting sites that would be useful, but also folks are looking for more things like training resources, such as the forensiccoe.org website that the FTCOE runs and NFSTC. So if each of you could sort of give your closing remarks, but also tell us a little bit about some of the practical places people can go to get more information about jobs and training and development in forensic science, that'd be great. Let's let's go in the order that we started with. We'll go to you, Jody, first, and then to Jan, and then to Cammie.
Thanks. I think this is an excellent question. And what I would encourage you to do, and I posted something in the chat box on this already, but there are multiple resources, and you have to do sort of a shotgun approach. You're the one that's seeking the information, so you need to go to these different resources to be able to gather it. In terms of being able to find training opportunities, I mentioned in my post that the FTCOE webinars are available to all of you. You have to just sign up for them. They're a routine, regular basis. The FTCOE offers other things aside from the webinars, whether they're publications, the Just Science podcast. It will expose you to lots of different facets of forensic science, and so I encourage you to become a really good consumer of the products that FTCOE produces, because it's excellent. NFSCC is another resource for training opportunities and information. In addition to those two, you have some other really important academic institutions that's doing research, publishing. It has information like West Virginia University, Marshall University, Florida International University, any of your local universities that are producing forensic science programs. I encourage you to ensure that the programs are seeking FEPAC accreditation if they're not already FEPAC accredited. Then you have your professional association websites. One of the best ones that I would encourage you to use, you can't be a member of the association until you're a forensic scientist and then have a leadership position, but that's the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors. They have a weekly newsletter that's published, and you can access it via their website. As a part of that newsletter, they list the training opportunities that are upcoming. They also have a method for hiring authorities like me and Jan and Cammie to list job opportunities. So you can go out there and you can see which agencies are hiring. It's a really good resource if you're looking to work for a crime laboratory. Then you have websites like the National Institute of Justice. Sign up for their newsletter because they issue really important publications that impact the community. You have reciprocal parties like that at BJA and NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Sign up for those newsletters. You will have more information than you can probably consume on a regular basis, but at least you have access to it. So I encourage you to use all those different resources to find those opportunities that are going to really work for you. Thank you.
Yes, Jody, I think Jody just really captured a lot of the website organizations. What I've also seen is that Indeed.com captures the postings that we post on, like ASCLD that Jody mentioned, or the American Academy of Forensic Science, AAFS.org. We post our hiring opportunities there. We post on the Firearms Examiner's website, AFTI. We look at II, we post there. So a lot of the forensic associations all have employment opportunities. But web crawlers and employment search like Indeed.com does capture those forensic
LinkedIn.
And
LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn. So all you need to do is, create an account and put in your keywords of what you're interested in, and you'll get those alerts almost daily from Indeed.com from across the nation, including private laboratories, private DNA companies who are looking for scientists, private academic institutions that are looking for research individuals for forensics and different technologies that they're looking. So Indeed.com and LinkedIn is a way to capture some of those employment opportunities. And the last thing I would comment on is something that Jody mentioned early on about perseverance. Our forensic industry is ever changing. We grow, we ebb and flow with opportunities, but if you are really and truly the person who wants to be in our forensic science laboratories, you must not give up. You must be the fly on the wall in every local laboratory director's phone inbox or email. Most of our pictures and addresses are on our law enforcement web pages. Mine is on the Colorado Department of Public Safety. I'm sure, you know, there may be some general email inboxes, but we will get those solicitations and those opportunities for volunteerism, interns, things that you might be interested in gaining the opportunity to stand out. From the 100 of applicants, what makes you stand out, as Jody talked about early on in this program. So perseverance and your integrity, all those things that need to be kept in check as you are trying to join our industry. But thank you again, Dr. Morgan, for the opportunity to participate, and I'll throw it back to you.
Oh, okay. I also want to hear from Cammie.
Yeah, I would second what Jody and Jan said. Those are all great resources to go to look for jobs, find job postings, see what's going on in the forensic community. All of the government jobs are posted on usajobs.gov. They will outline the specific qualifications for each position, and they are usually mass hiring, so it's not for a specific location. So you would be considered for any of our 8 laboratories in the United States if you apply for one of those postings. All of the other government jobs are also posted on there, so you can check back daily or weekly to see what's out there, and you can type in keywords and it will search for you. As far as closing remarks, I want to also thank you, Dr. Morgan, and for having me on this panel. This was an excellent opportunity, and I welcome that. Thank you so much to all the participants and people who are listening for so long. I appreciate the fact that you are willing and wanting to learn more about forensics as a profession. This is actually a great avenue to learn more from people who have been in the profession for a long time. We are career professionals, and we have a passion for it, and that's why we've stayed for so long. So as Jody and Jan both said, persevere, self-motivation, initiative, all of those things will bode well for you when you are trying to apply for a job. I will say when it comes to interviewing, communication is the key. So when you go into an interview, make sure you're prepared, because that will set you apart from someone else. Be prepared to answer any question they throw at you. Do your research in advance. Know what type of organization and what job you're applying for. Do some online research when you're, if you're applying for DEA. What do you know about DEA? Why do you want to work for DEA? Why do you want a forensic job? And what interests you? Things of that nature show me as an interviewer that you've actually done your due diligence in researching information about our organization before you are applying for a job. So all of that will help you in the long run, but don't give up, and I wish all of you the best of luck. Thank you again.
And thank you to Jody Wolf, to Cammie Dubach, and to Jan Gurton. You all did a fantastic job.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Morgan, and obviously, again, thank you to all of our subject matter experts for today's webinar and presentation. This is the conclusion of the National Forensic Science Week. Here at the FTCOE, we really tried to bridge the gap between the early career scientists and the veteran lab directors and the people that have made a career in the forensic field, and I really feel like we have done that with everyone's help. The conversations in the chat were just so great to see such great interaction between all of our participants. Again, both the early career forensic professionals and then the people that have been in the field for 30, 40 years. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you again to our subject matter experts for your insight today. We are going to do a little bit of a housekeeping just to wrap things up. Again, the webinars that we put on at the FTCOE are they're not possible without your attendance and your support. So thank you everyone for attending today. There are a few web links we have down in the bottom left-hand corner. Cammie Dubach was kind enough to give some information there about the Office of Forensic Sciences that she works with at the DEA. We also wanted to announce for the National Forensic Science Week, our photo contest winners. They are from the McKinney, Texas Police Department. You can click on that web link there and see the video of photographs of several of their subject matter experts practicing their trade that they submitted to be able to win the photo contest for this week. As always, we do have our customer satisfaction survey there in the middle of your screen. Simply click the Here word and that will open up a new window. It's a very short survey and your feedback is valuable information that we always use to make sure that we are delivering the best webinars that we possibly can to your audience. You'll see Julian there in our chat pod is posting some of our social media outlets, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as John mentioned the podcast that is just a fantastic thing to listen to every day, whether you're going to work, on your way home from work, or just have a few minutes out of your day. Definitely check that out. You'll see our website there as well, www.forensiccoe.org, to see a wide range of all of our webinars that we offer, as well as publications, reports, and our podcasts as well. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you to all of our presenters and to our moderator, Dr. John Morgan, who is doing a fantastic job with our FTCOE program. We hope everyone has a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you for joining us for National Forensic Science Week, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.